Welcome back to OC Spotlight. I don't know if this will be the first one or if my Bright Star one will be the first one. I made these two together, but I'm reading the River one first, if that makes any sense. So, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I'm not good at drawing humans digitally. On paper, I can do a pretty good headshot, and I'm trying to get comfortable with full body and hands. Ooh, this is bad. And I know where I went wrong here. I made River's head too long. Her head is kind of narrow and comes to a sharp point, but her head isn't very, very long. I, I don't know what I did here. How I came to this conclusion of, oh yes, her head should be longer than her body. Okay, I drew her with short hair here, because over the course of the AU, her hair changes quite a bit, and at the start it's rather long, and that's how I normally draw it. So this was another new thing, keeping her hairstyle consistent while shortening the length. That was far more successful than her face. Fun fact, I also often forget to draw over a scar and have to go back and add it later. Coloring is easy. By now I have a pretty good sense of River's color palette. It took me a while to get there, but I got there. Now let's talk about the character herself. River is reserved, cautious, a little too quick to pull out a weapon. She has severe PTSD. On the other hand, she is highly respected among her siblings, loves her people, and takes her job as a state seriously. She is very protective of those she cares about. Her trust is hard-earned, but once you have it, you have it. River is bisexual and is in a poly relationship. She is the most insecure of the people in her relationship. This leads to her not relying on them, as she likely should. She also is so used to burying everything down for so long that the fact that she can open up and lean on other people for support just doesn't register in her head. She's a good mother not only to her own kids, but to her younger siblings. She's rather close with Jason, and blames herself for bleeding Kansas, which, let's be honest, yeah, guilt. That was interesting when I was doing research on Kansas. As far as being a region head, she's rather laid back. She doesn't really care what you do as long as you don't cause trouble and listen to the few rules she has. She'll pretty much leave you alone, which has resulted in her being popular. Don't get me wrong, it took 6 years of working on State Chaos for it to become what it is. I've had a lot of time to flesh out the characters and time to trim any unneeded fat to the story. So let me tell you some of her old personality. She was flighty, never really staying in one place for too long, was cut off from just about everyone, more violent with no good reason behind it, to the point where there was a running joke in-universe that she might actually be a sociopath. Some things of her personality have stayed consistent throughout all rewrites. She's a ruthless fighter and is hard on herself training-wise. She trains because she is paranoid after her attack that someone would try and hurt her again. She would never be good enough in her own book, and even though as time goes on she lightens up a bit, it's still something that in the back of her mind won't leave her alone, and I have a collection of State Chaos one-shots, and I'm going to pick out a couple of Rivers, because I feel like this isn't long enough for the entire speed paint. Alright, so I've selected Fractured. It was actually the very first thing I wrote and posted about State Chaos on my AO3. So it does have some of her older character development, but I looked through the State Chaos shorts, and I've actually written very little about her in the shorts. I don't know why I chose that to be the one thing I diversify, but here we go. Alfred knew he should step in. River and Aaron were facing each other in the middle of a loose ring of states. Blood poured down River's face from her likely broken nose. Aaron, on the other hand, had a busted lip and a cut on his forehead above his left eye. Alfred had to admit he was shocked to see Aaron here at all. He had vanished over a year prior, ironically after beating the shit out of River after she opposed him when he tried disowning his son. Aaron showed up at River's door a week later, wanting to fix his mistake like she had done so many times before. Wanting her to fix his mistake like she had done so many times before. This time, however, River refused, and Aaron left, and went to his state, and they hadn't heard from him until now. Too bad the first thing he did was attack. River had the advantage in the openness of the field they were in, easily dodging her brother's blows. Alfred had to admit River was holding her ground well, considering she was at a disadvantage size-wise. While yes, River was taller by a good 4 inches. Aaron outweighed her by a considerable margin. Like a snake, River would charge, hit, and jump backward, all while keeping Aaron on her left side. River had lost the vision in her right eye because of Aaron over a century prior, and Alfred knew his son was well aware of the advantage getting on River's blind side would give him. Alfred didn't want to give Aaron that chance, but he found himself unable to move, wanting subconsciously to see how this would pan out. The hits stopped, for now at least. Aaron was sidestepping, desperately trying to get the upper hand by getting out of his sister's line of sight. River was not dumb, and was matching him step for step. What the hell, Illinois? He could tell by the tone of his daughter's voice that it was more of a statement than a question. The affirmation state just sneered back as a response, as if talking to his sister was below him. The surrounding states, which had been cheering and chanting, essentially egging on the fight, quieted. Alfred seemed to find his voice at once. Riv? He didn't get to finish the statement. Since the second River heard him start to say her name, she turned, and Aaron took the opportunity to shift to her right side and run at his sister. River was flying a good 15 feet, and from how still she was at first, Alfred thought she had died. Then she stirred, too quick to have registered, and Alfred, finally broken out of whatever trace, ran to help her, while Luke went to restrain Aaron. He was not prepared for the state River's face was in. The skin that should be her cheek and part of her lower jaw hung from her face in ribbons. She held her mouth ajar at an odd angle, which made Alfred think that it was either broken or dislocated. So much blood was pouring from the wound that he was surprised River was still awake. Yes, their kind could lose a lot more blood than humans, but they would still pass out or die from blood loss if they lose too much. Alfred started to make his way into the house of River, who was fighting weakly in his hole trying to get back into the fight. About halfway to the house, she gave up or finally passed out. Alfred really didn't stop to check and was dragged into the house. It wasn't until they made it into the infirmary that Alfred learned two things. One, River was indeed awake, and two, she was pissed. Why did you do that? She signed in American Sign Language, which again supported the theory that her jaw was unusable. River knew ASL like all the states, and since she had no other way to shoo her father out, it seemed this was where they were going. River, things were she cut him off, and America had to wonder if not being able to use her jaw faced her at all. I did not start the fight. He jumped me. This was going to get old fast. You were thrown 15 feet, and you expect to jump back headfirst into a fight? In all honesty, Alfred knew River was one of his most hard-headed states, which was both a blessing and a curse. When she put her mind to something, she got it done, but that also means she's beyond stubborn. Then again, he was pretty sure he had the likes of Texas, New York, and Georgia to thank for that, since most of her younger years were spent around them, and they undoubtedly had the biggest effect on her personality. At least Texas tended to act as a balance to River's more passionate personality. Yeah, let's go with that. He knew River tended to be the first in a fight and the last to be pulled out of one. Please just hold still. We can deal with Aaron when we're sure you're okay. River just made an annoyed sound, almost a growl in her throat, but sat still so Alfred could see her face. Her nose seemed to have already healed on its own, so all Alfred did was clean the blood up from around her nose. He then turned his attention to the rest of her face, and as he cleaned more blood away from the wound, he was taken aback by the bone that jutted out of her face. Aaron had hit so hard that he had broken the right side of her lower jaw in half. He felt sick. Sure, he had seen plenty of horrible wounds. After all, he'd seen River almost torn in half. And she survived. Barely. He knew for a fact he couldn't really do much for the wound. Sure, if it had just been dislocated, then he could have just popped it back into place, but other than simple stitches and bandages, that was as far as his medical expertise goes. He really only had two options here. One, get Eric and have him take care of it, which would have been the faster of the two options, or two, call River's personal doctor to fix her up. He knew River and Eric weren't on speaking terms at the moment, so he threw that out the window pretty fast. So River's personal doctor it is. There was one problem. He needed to go to his office to call said doctor, and he didn't trust River to stay put and wait. Hold on 1 second, he said, and stuck his head out the door to the infirmary to grab the first state to pass by, who just so happened to be New York. River and Addison got along well, and he knew the older state would be able to restrain River if she tried leaving. Hey, Addison, come here for a minute and help me with something. Sure, what do? She cut herself off when he saw the state River's face was in. River, what did you do? River looked confused. What? She signed. America and Addison just looked at her like she lost her mind. Can't you feel that? Alfred asked, slightly creeped out. What? She signed. Alfred and Addison just looked at her like she lost her mind. Can't you feel that? Alfred asked, slightly creeped out. I haven't had much feeling in my face since 1862. Okay, Alfred said, changing the subject back to the more important topic. Addie, watch her while I go call her doctor. I can't stress enough, do not let her leave this room. He didn't turn and left before River could react to the last-minute babysitter. It actually didn't take as long as Alfred thought it would for River's doctor to arrive. Then again, when you described the type of injury River had, it was pretty clear to her doctor she was needed quickly. River had this particular doctor for a few years. She had been fresh out of med school when River had hired her, which is both a good thing and bad. Good in the sense... Okay, I'm gonna stop there. I wasn't aware how long this fucking thing was, so you guys get it. You can kind of pick up some of her old personality in that. This was just to pad out the runtime of the video, honestly. I have no idea where I'm going with this. So, okay, I hope you guys enjoyed the speed paint. Bye.